Hello, good afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of Conversation with Francis from A Journey into the Mind. Today, I'm going to speak about a topic that's dear to me because I wrote my book on the basis of that topic. And I have a question for you, the listener. Why is it that society tend to judge everything? And when I say everything, I mean everything. Do you consider that it's normal for someone to suffer a little bit of emotional turmoil or emotional depression as a result of losing a loved one? Is it normal? I will say with all consideration that it is. Today, they consider the act of mourning the death of a loved one to be a mental illness. Since when it is unacceptable to have feelings and emotions as a human being? Since when it is not possible for someone to feel the loss of a loved one deeply inside? It is normal and it is acceptable as well. We cannot hold on to those feelings and try to release them later on, acting as if they do not exist. I personally can attest to the reality that that is very, very unhealthy. You see, I lost a loved one, not one, but two, three. And it took me a very long time to accept the fact that it was okay to hurt instead of escaping from the emotional acceptance of what is. That, in fact, can be considered a mental illness if you wake up every single day thinking about those feelings and emotions and feeling them along the process. We human beings have a tendency to want to pretend that things are not as they are. And in fact, that is very healthy. When I lost my father, I went through a very, very difficult trauma emotionally. I didn't know how to accept the fact that it was okay that he was gone. I wanted him here with me, and I missed him for a very long time. I was very close to him. The reason why it took me a long time is not only because I was going through that experience, but I had other emotional experiences as well piled up. That all became a little bit too much to handle, and it takes time to get rid of them. However, that does not mean that I have a mental illness. It is perfectly normal to suffer emotionally for someone that you miss. It is acceptable and it's normal. For how long we are all responsible for how long do we want to stay in that state of mind. For me, after a while, I took the initiative to write a book and put into words how I felt in order for me to release those feelings and emotions that I was experiencing. Feelings and emotion that I escaped from previously in order not to deal with them. I'm pretty sure you have watched other videos where I made public the fact that I have lost three little ones and I escaped from the reality of what happened. I pretended that I didn't want to deal with it. It was over. I'm moving on with it. Only to understand that later on I have to face it and I have to feel those feelings in order to release them. This is the reason why I can stand here in front of you and attest to the reality that is only a mental illness if you can never release the feeling of depression or mourning or suffering from the loss of a loved one. Today, in fact, there are programs to help people deal with the loss of a loved one and not to stay in that state of mind that makes you feel as if you're dying inside and missing something so deeply that you can't move on, which is pretty close related to the feeling of depression. And in fact, some people find escape avenues to deal with those feelings instead of facing the reality until they're ready to talk about it and face it and deal with the emotional pile that is being held for a period of time. It's not abnormal. However, I will say it is not a sickness. It's totally understandable. Imagine that you're a child and you're only 12 years old and your parents has on and you miss them tremendously. Do you think that's going to happen overnight? That this child is just going to erase the memories of his parents that he lived with for 12 years? That's not possible. However, it takes an initiative to get psychological help in order for the child to understand the process of death and living. And even though we as adults are not easily acceptance of the reality of death, we have to come to the conclusion that we live and die. That is the process of our beginning and our end. But we are creatures of habits and we get attached and we want possession and we want to have our families and loved ones with us. Not only until we understand that detachment is important in order to know that life is the process of evolvement in which we learn to enjoy while we're here until the time comes to let go, release, and accept what is, which is death. I don't understand why society has to label things. Why society have to say that to mourn a loved one is an illness, a mental illness? I tell you what's a mental illness. Mental illness is depression. Mental illness is depending on chemical and alcohol and other things to try to suppress the emotional feelings or problems that are going on deep inside oneself. That is a mental illness because it is totally normal. Imagine you are married for 20, 30 years with someone, or you have your children go to school and you don't know how to deal with the fact that all of a sudden you're home all by yourself in this big house and your children are no longer there. Or you are divorced and your husband is no longer with you. Do you think that has an effect on any normal human being? Of course it does. Of course it has a negative effect on your emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. And it takes time, not 1 year. Sometimes it takes 3 years. Does that mean that you're mentally ill? I wish that society stopped putting labels on the fact that it's normal for us to deal with emotional problems and mishap that happen in our life as normal human beings. It's taken me a very long time to accept the fact that I'm not in control, not my will, that is thy will, and that this life that we live in, we have no control over anything. We think we do. We think we can control everything around our surrounding, our life, other people's life, how long they're here, how long they stay with us. Impossible. Completely impossible. We do not have control. And learning to accept what is more important than attaching to things that we do not have control over, whether it is our parents, our siblings, our loved ones, our spouses. Life is a journey, and it is a journey that we have to learn to accept what is in the past, the present, and the future, and learn to move on with oneself, with compassion, with authenticity, with kindness, and total independence as well. Because when we relied on someone to be the self, we are completely lost. And when that other person is not there, then a drastic situation happens emotionally. We don't know how to deal with this self. Detachment is very important. Understanding that mourning for the loss of a loved one is normal is also understanding. And it is not, I will repeat, it is not a mental illness. Rather, it makes a difference for each individual how long it takes them to detach from those emotions, feelings, and experiences and memories of a loved one. I thank you once again for listening to my video. This is Francis Mayhem from A Journey into the Mind, and it is a pleasure as usual to be here with you to continue to give you a little bit of insight on the purpose of this book, the reason why it was written, and a journey I have taken that is taking me to where I am today. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.